The Galactic Concord had celebrated their latest triumph with the cold efficiency of a machine. It was a victory over the Zelvani Confederacy, a once proud alliance of species that had resisted the Concord's expansion for centuries. Now, in the aftermath, nothing remained of their once thriving worlds but ruin and silence. Thorin, Supreme Commander of the Concord, stood at the helm of the flagship Eclipse, staring out into the stars beyond. The fleet was vast, its thousands of ships a testament to the might of the Concord. Every race within the coalition had contributed to the campaign, a unified force bent on eliminating the last flickers of defiance in the galaxy. The Eclipse was their prize ship, a massive war cruiser that symbolized the Concord's power. Inside its sterile command center, Thorin's officers were already discussing the next phase of their expansion. Sector 17 is clear, Commander. The Zelvani held the last of their resistance there, but it's under control now. It's time to move on to the next target. Lieutenant Gorn, a gruff Ilthran officer, reported. His sharp mandibles clicked as he spoke, a sign of his satisfaction with the clean execution of the Zelvani. Thorin's pale blue eyes narrowed as he reviewed the galactic maps projected before him. Sector 17 had been a bloody campaign, but the Concord had prevailed. Yet something felt off. There was a tension in the air, something lurking at the edges of his mind. The Zelvani had been cornered, but their last stand had been vicious, showing an unusual level of tenacity. Perhaps he had underestimated them. Next target. Thorin's voice was calm, but his thoughts were elsewhere. His fleet was one step away from total galactic supremacy, but something tugged at him. What's the status on the Sol 3 system? A hushed silence filled the command center. It wasn't a place that held much interest for most of the Concord's high command. Sol 3, as it was known in the Concord records, was an insignificant sector on the fringe of the galaxy, a small backwater system. Its star, a yellow dwarf, orbited 3 planets, one of which was home to a species known as humans, a primitive species, according to the last data sent from an automated probe over a century ago. Their technology was rudimentary, and their military forces barely capable of maintaining peace within their own borders. Lieutenant Gorn shifted nervously, tapping a control panel. The last report from the automated probe came in over 100 years ago, Commander. It indicated that humans had minimal capabilities, barely able to make interstellar travel, with little understanding of quantum mechanics or energy weaponry. Thorin's lips tightened. Minimal capabilities, yes. But something had been bothering him about the reports ever since. The Concord had crushed countless species with far more advanced technology than humanity's, and yet, why did this system still occupy a sliver of his thoughts? Something didn't add up. Keep an eye on it, Thorin said, more to himself than anyone else. I want live scans. Don't underestimate them. His officers exchanged uncertain glances. It was an unnecessary directive. After all, who could possibly be a threat from such an insignificant world? The Concord had defeated far more dangerous foes, and this was a race of barely clad apes on a speck of dust in the grand scheme of the universe. But Thorin could not shake the sense that, somehow, somewhere in the deep expanse of space, something was watching them back. Something far darker than any of them realized. The peace of the Concord fleet was shattered by a sudden anomaly. At first, it seemed like just another passing disturbance, a strange signal from a remote sector. But when the fleet's scanners failed to make sense of the readings, alarm bells began ringing. What was supposed to be a simple survey mission to the Sol 3 system was becoming increasingly odd. Thorin stood in the war room of the Eclipse, staring at the holographic display as it flickered and shifted, showing an image of Sol 3's outer system. The human world had once seemed like little more than a curiosity, but now the situation was growing more complicated by the second. Something had been detected near Saturn, far beyond the range of any known human craft. Report, Thorin demanded, his voice cold, but tinged with a growing unease. Commander, we're picking up a signal, said Korith, the chief communications officer, her tendrils twitching in slight agitation. But it's not a human frequency. It's unlike anything we've encountered before. It's not using standard warp signatures, nor is it based on any known form of subspace communication. Voron's sharp eyes flicked to the screen, which now showed a small black dot in the distance. It was just beyond Saturn's rings, the sensor data barely able to calculate its distance. The craft, whatever it was not broadcasting in any way the Concorde fleet had ever seen. "Is it a human vessel?" Voron asked, still trying to make sense of it. But he could feel the answer before it came. This was not human technology. His instincts screamed that it was something far worse. "We're not sure, Commander," Korith said, her voice strained. "It's moving too quickly to be a standard ship. We've never seen propulsion like it." Before Voron could respond, the sensors flashed again. The object moved closer. Then, without warning, it vanished entirely. Not a trace, not a sign of its departure, nothing. The sensor readings went blank. The Eclipse's shields hummed in response, as if the ship could sense something coming. But nothing came. It was as if the vessel had never existed. "Bring us into position. I want a full scan of that location," Voron ordered, his voice growing sharp. A few minutes later, the fleet had moved closer to Saturn's rings, and Voron stood at the edge of the command center, his mind racing. It was a risk, facing an unknown entity with a fleet already on edge. But the Concorde was never one to back down. Not now, not when the galaxy was within their grasp. As they approached the source of the disturbance, another oddity occurred. A ship, this time clearly visible, appeared from the dark shadow of one of Saturn's moons. It was sleek, black, almost obsidian in color, with no discernible markings. Its edges glimmered with faint ripples, as if the very fabric of space itself bent around the craft. It was an impossible sight. Even the most advanced Concorde technology had never achieved anything like this. Voron's officers were silent, each of them processing the sight in their own way. There was no mistaking it now. This was no human ship. The design was too advanced, too alien, too predatory. "It's a trap," Lieutenant Gorn growled. His mandibles clicked angrily as his instincts told him to engage, to strike first. But Voron held up a hand, his expression darkening. He wasn't so sure anymore. The black ship didn't fire. It simply hovered in place, its presence chilling. Then, without warning, a pulse of energy shot out from it, striking the nearest Concorde reconnaissance ship. The ship didn't explode. It didn't even flicker. It simply ceased to exist. A whole vessel, gone, as though it had never been there. Voron's grip tightened on the edge of the console. "Retreat," he commanded, his voice low. Now. But it was too late. The fleet was already under attack. The Eclipse and its fleet fell back, retreating from the unknown vessel with a sense of urgency that reverberated throughout the entire command structure. The chilling sight of a ship, one they could not understand, erasing a reconnaissance cruiser with a single, effortless pulse of energy left a stain of panic. No Concorde fleet commander had ever felt so vulnerable. Yet, Voron had no choice but to pull back. The Concorde's primary objective had always been to maintain control, and it was clear now that they were up against something they didn't understand. He stood at the helm of the Eclipse, staring at the empty space where the mysterious ship had been. The universe felt vast and unfathomable again, a stark contrast to the certainty that had been the Concorde's strength. "Commander," Gorn said, breaking the silence, his voice laced with anger, "we cannot allow this. We are the Galactic Concorde. We were built for this." "I know, Lieutenant," Voron replied, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "But this is different." It had been less than an hour since the pulse from the black ship had obliterated their reconnaissance ship, but Voron could feel it. The entire fleet was on edge, unsettled by the unknown force, now lurking on the fringes of their empire. What was it? And why had it made itself known now, in this remote, barely significant sector of space? The comms officer's voice cut through the tension. "Commander, we've received new intelligence from the Dark Star on the edge of the system. A transmission, one that's clearly human in origin. It's not much, but..." Her voice trailed off, hesitant. "Let's hear it," Vorin said, his eyes narrowing. Humans. The primitive species, the ones the Concord had long dismissed as no threat, were finally revealing themselves as more than they appeared. The transmission crackled through the speakers, its static-laden message a strange juxtaposition to the cold precision of Concord communications. "This is Captain Arcturus of the Terran Directorate. If you are receiving this, you've already made a grave mistake. You've underestimated us. We are not the primitive species you think we are. We will not allow you to conquer our world, and we will not stand by while you enslave the stars. Turn back. Leave Earth, and never return." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of something far more dangerous than simple threats. There was finality in the tone of the message, a certainty that left no room for negotiation. Vorin clenched his fists, feeling the icy fingers of dread close around his heart. Who was this Captain Arcturus? How had they managed to hide for so long? Gorn's voice was full of fury. "It's a bluff. They can't possibly be capable of anything more than primitive weapons. We can obliterate them with our fleet." But Vorin was not so sure. His mind raced, analyzing the implications of the message. This wasn't just a human defending their homeworld. This was a challenge, one that carried the unmistakable ring of a warning from someone who had seen something much, much worse than any conventional weapon. "I don't think they're bluffing," Vorin said quietly, almost to himself. "Whatever they've done, whatever they've become, we've underestimated them. I want live scans of Earth. No more reliance on outdated probes. Full analysis. Now." The fleet's scientists scrambled to comply, but what they found only deepened the mystery. Earth was not the planet it had once been. The signature readings were far beyond anything they'd expected. There were energy signatures in the atmosphere that couldn't be explained by known science. And then there were the structures, scattered across the planet's surface. Massive complexes, many of which seemed to defy all laws of physics. "Something is wrong," one of the lead scientists murmured. "The human race has achieved something impossible. These readings, this technology, it's as if they've reached the very fabric of space-time itself. They've unlocked something we've never seen before." Vorin's blood ran cold as he stared at the data on the screen. This was no longer a simple skirmish or a matter of conquest. Earth wasn't just hiding from the Concord. It was preparing. And now, Vorin realized with growing dread, the fate of the galaxy might hinge on what humanity had become. In the distance, beyond the edge of the Sol system, something else emerged from the shadows. Another ship, darker, more massive than the first. It wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration. Earth was ready for war. The calm that had settled over the Concord fleet after the transmission from Captain Arcturus was fleeting. Vorin stood at the command center of the eclipse, still grappling with the implications of the mysterious message. Earth, once considered insignificant, now loomed large in his thoughts. The unknown ship that had decimated their reconnaissance vessel, the strange readings from the human homeworld. And now this unsettling transmission. It all painted a picture the Concord wasn't prepared to see. For the first time, the fleet hesitated. They had crushed countless civilizations. They had toppled empires. But nothing had prepared them for this. Vorin's attention snapped back to the present as his sensors flared. The black ship, which had disappeared after the initial attack, reappeared in the Sol system. But this time, it wasn't alone. Two more ships, even larger and more menacing, emerged from the shadow of one of Earth's moons. They were sleek, dark vessels, like predators stalking their prey. "Commander, they're on an intercept course," Gorn said, his voice hardening. "They're coming for us." Vorin's jaw tightened. Prepare for battle. Shields up. All weapons ready. It had begun. Earth had waited, watched, and now they were striking back. It wasn't just a defensive action. It was a declaration of war. The Concorde fleet had always maintained a massive advantage in numbers and firepower, but these ships were like nothing they had ever seen. They moved with an eerie precision, their energy signatures unlike any known weaponry. They were unpredictable, darting through space with movements that defied known laws of physics. Voren watched as the three ships flanked the fleet, creating a perfect, menacing triangle. The black ships didn't engage immediately. They were toying with them. It was a message. We are in control now. Before Voren could issue his next command, the first strike came, a burst of energy that slammed into the Eclipse's shields with the force of a supernova. The ship's hull shuddered, and lights flickered as the shields groaned under the pressure. What the hell was that? Gorn shouted. The comms officer's voice crackled over the intercom. It's a singularity burst, a localized distortion of gravity. It's collapsing space around us. Voren's eyes widened. A singularity burst. That kind of weapon was nothing short of a nightmare. It wasn't designed to destroy. It was designed to warp reality itself, folding space and time into chaos. Return fire. Voren barked. The fleet unleashed a torrent of weapons fire, every laser and energy cannon they had aimed at the black ships. But the enemy vessels simply vanished into thin air, reappearing on the opposite side of the fleet as though mocking their every move. It was as if they weren't just bending space. They were breaking it. Suddenly, a second wave of fire surged toward the Eclipse, and Voren watched in horror as one of their largest warships, the Titanus, was consumed by a pulse of energy. The ship didn't explode. It simply disintegrated, its mass and structure unraveling like threads pulled from a tapestry. In a matter of seconds, the Titanus was gone, leaving behind only the faintest traces of radiation. No, Gorn screamed, his voice thick with disbelief. How are they doing this? Voren's mind raced. Earth's technology had far surpassed anything they had anticipated. This wasn't just the work of a few advanced ships. This was the manifestation of a far-reaching, hidden network of power that the Concorde couldn't even begin to comprehend. And then, as if to underscore the nightmare, a voice crackled through the fleet's comms system again. It was Captain Arcturus's voice, calm and measured. You have underestimated us for far too long, Commander Voren. This is the beginning of your end. The transmission ended, but the meaning was clear. Humanity had not just awakened, they had evolved beyond anything the galaxy had ever known. And the Concorde fleet was already on the retreat. Voren's pulse quickened. The fleet had suffered catastrophic losses in moments, and the strange ships had yet to even show the full extent of their capabilities. Desperation clawed at his thoughts. They had been wrong. The humans weren't just fighting for survival. They were hunting them down. As the remaining Concorde ships began to pull back, Voren was left with a terrifying realization. Earth wasn't just an unknown entity. It was now the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced, and they had only just begun to fight back. The Eclipse staggered in space, its once pristine hull now marred by the energy blasts that had rocked it moments ago. Voren's thoughts churned like a storm. The battle was slipping from his grasp, and it was clear that Earth, a species the Concorde had so arrogantly dismissed, was now a formidable enemy. He stood in the war room, his mind racing as he watched his officers scramble in the wake of the devastation. Status report. Voren's voice was steel, but the worry beneath it was unmistakable. Shield strength at 20%, Commander. Weapon systems are still operational, but not at full capacity, said Gorn, his voice tight with barely contained anger. The Titanus, the flagship of the Concorde's war fleet, was gone. Disintegrated. It had been their greatest asset, and now the Concorde was left reeling. They were more vulnerable than ever before. We've lost contact with several fleets throughout the system, the comms officer added. It's possible they've been disabled or destroyed. No word from the Phalanx or the Vanguard. Voren's gaze hardened as he stared at the holographic map in front of him. The Sol system had once been a footnote in their plans for galactic expansion. Now it had become the crucible where the future of the galaxy would be forged. The Concorde was losing its grip. "We need reinforcements," Gorn spat. "We can't fight these ships with what we have left." Voran shook his head. "There is no time for reinforcements. The humans already have us on the run. Their ships, their weapons, it's like nothing I've ever seen. What in the name of the stars is happening on Earth?" The silence in the room was deafening. The officers around him all struggling with the same question. How had the humans hidden such a vast power from the entire galaxy for so long? What had changed? His thoughts were interrupted by a low hum from the console. The science officer's voice came through, thick with awe and fear. "Commander, we've detected something. Something else. There's a faint energy pulse emanating from Earth, something we can't quite identify. It's unlike the black ships, but it's connected somehow." "Show me," Voran ordered, his mind racing. The hologram flickered, and a new shape appeared. A massive, sprawling network of lines and glowing points, stretching out from Earth and extending through the galaxy, seemingly invisible to the naked eye. "It's not a ship," the scientist said hesitantly. It's a web. A network of some kind. But it's everywhere, Commander. Like threads, connecting Earth to other parts of the galaxy. We've never seen anything like it." Voran's heart skipped a beat. A web. Could the humans have developed something that intertwined their technology on a galactic scale? Could this network be the key to their power? "The humans have been hiding more than just weapons," Voran muttered, his voice cold with realization. "They've built an empire, not through military might, but through control. They've connected every system, every world, and we didn't even know it." The implications were staggering. The Concorde had always relied on overwhelming military force, thinking it was the key to dominance. But what if the humans had never needed to fight that battle? What if they had been building a network that could manipulate the very fabric of space itself, rendering the Concorde's forces impotent? Gorn slammed his fist against the console. "So we've been played. While we've been crushing their neighbors, they've been setting traps, hiding in plain sight." Voran nodded slowly, the grim weight of the situation pressing down on him. "We've made a terrible mistake. Earth's power isn't just in their ships or their weapons. It's in the infrastructure they've built. They control more than we realized." A low hum filled the room again, and the comms officer's voice cut through. "Commander, we're receiving another transmission from Earth. This time, it's different." Voran's pulse quickened. "Patch it through." The voice that came through the comms this time was not Captain Arcturus. It was deeper, older, a voice that carried the weight of authority, and something far more ancient. "This is Director Elysium of the Terran Directorate. Commander Voran, I suggest you reconsider your position. We have watched, waited, and prepared. The time for negotiation is over. The fate of your fleet, and your people, depends on whether you can understand the reality you face. Earth is not what you think it is. You have underestimated us for the last time." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a silence that echoed in the war room. Voran stood still, his mind racing. Director Elysium. The name meant nothing to him, but the implications were clear. Whoever this was, they were not just a representative of humanity. They were the architect of the web, the invisible force that had quietly shaped the future of the galaxy from the shadows. And now, the galaxy would have to face the consequences of that quiet power. The silence following the transmission from Director Elysium was suffocating. Voran's mind raced, trying to piece together the fractured puzzle of Earth's true power. A network, a hidden infrastructure spanning the galaxy, pulling the strings from behind the scenes. It was a revelation that made him question everything he thought he knew about warfare, about control. "Commander." Gorn's voice brought Voran back to reality. "What are we going to do?" Voran's eyes flicked across the faces of his senior officers, all awaiting his command. It was clear now that they had grossly underestimated humanity. Not only had Earth developed weapons that could tear through their fleet with terrifying efficiency, but they had also built a network that allowed them to control the very space the Concord relied on. The ramifications were enormous. The galactic order was crumbling, and Voren realized with a growing sense of dread that the Concord might already be doomed. "We need to regroup," Voren said finally, his voice low but steady. "We can't face them head-on with what we have left. The fleet's numbers are dwindling, and I'm not willing to send them to their deaths just yet." "But we can't retreat forever," Gorn argued. "If they have control of the galaxy, if they can bend space to their will, we're done. The Concord will be wiped out." Voren nodded, but the words stuck in his throat. He knew that Gorn was right. Even if they retreated now, it wouldn't be long before Earth's influence spread even further. And once they had the entire galaxy in their grasp, the Concord wouldn't be able to fight back. They were facing an enemy that didn't just wield power. They controlled it. The thought of facing such an enemy sent a cold chill down Voren's spine. This isn't a war. This is the end. He straightened up, meeting his officer's eyes. "We need information. If there's a weakness in this web, this network the humans have built, we have to find it. We need to understand how they've connected everything, and what they're truly capable of. We can't fight them if we don't know the rules of the game." There was a long pause before Gorn spoke again, his voice cautious. "What if the humans are beyond reaching, Commander? What if this web is something we can't even see? What if the humans have become a force we can't stop?" Voren's mind flickered back to the words of Director Elysium. "The fate of your fleet, and your people, depends on whether you can understand the reality you face." What did Elysium mean by that? What did they know that the Concord didn't? "We're not going to just give up," Voren said firmly, despite the gnawing doubt in the back of his mind. "I don't know what kind of power they've developed, but I refuse to believe that humanity is unbeatable. We've conquered civilizations far more powerful than anything Earth has ever shown us. There's always a way to break them." Gorn's expression softened slightly, though his worry was still palpable. "And if we can't, what happens then?" Voren didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned his gaze to the view screen, watching the distant, dark ships that hovered like silent predators in space. Earth's fleet was formidable, but they weren't invincible. Not yet. "I'm sending a team to Earth," Voren said after a moment. "A special team, one that can operate outside the fleet's direct control. We need someone who can infiltrate their infrastructure, understand the web, and find out what they're really hiding." Gorn raised an eyebrow. "You think they'll let us get that close?" "I don't know," Voren admitted. "But we don't have a choice. This is our only option." As the officers began to process the plan, Voren felt the weight of the decision settle upon him. Sending a team to Earth was a desperate gamble. Earth was no longer just a planet to conquer. It was a fortress, a labyrinth of power that the Concord might not be able to navigate. But it was their last hope. Without knowledge of how Earth's web worked, they were blind. And Voren was not willing to accept blindness. Not when everything was on the line. The decision to send a team to Earth was one born out of desperation. Voren knew it. Everyone aboard the Eclipse knew it. It was a gamble, a final, fragile hope that the Concord could uncover some weakness, some way to fight back against an enemy that had transformed from an afterthought into the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Voren stood at the war room table, his fingers tapping nervously against the surface as he watched the team assemble. 5 men and women, handpicked for their skills in covert operations, espionage, and tactical analysis. Their mission: infiltrate Earth's hidden infrastructure, track the source of the web that had ensnared the galaxy, and return with whatever information they could gather. "Commander," said Gorn, his face shadowed with uncertainty, "are you sure this is the right move? Sending a team into Earth's heart is risky, too risky. We've barely scratched the surface of their capabilities, and Earth is no longer the weak, primitive planet we thought it was." Voren's gaze never wavered from the team. Each of them wore the cold, determined expression of someone who understood the stakes of what they were about to do. If they succeeded, they might be able to expose the flaw in Earth's web, maybe even find a way to disrupt the mysterious network that had given them such unparalleled control. If they failed, the fleet's already precarious position would deteriorate even further. "We have no choice," Vorin said quietly, meeting Gorn's eyes. "If we're going to survive, we need to understand their power. We can't fight a war without knowing the enemy's true strength. This is the only way." Gorn sighed, but nodded. "I'll prepare the team for deployment, Commander." Minutes later, the small team stood in the shuttle bay, waiting for the transport to Earth's atmosphere. The leader of the squad, a seasoned officer named Eris Kellen, spoke first, her voice firm yet tinged with the weight of their mission. "We all know why we're here," Kellen said, addressing her team. "We're not just infiltrating a planet. We're infiltrating the system, a system that controls everything. Earth has grown far beyond anything we expected. We can't afford to fail." She paused, allowing the gravity of her words to settle in. "We'll be on our own. No backup. No reinforcements. Once we land, we'll have to blend in, gather intel, and get back to the fleet with whatever we can. If we don't, we're on our own." "Understood." The team nodded in agreement, their faces resolute. "Good. Then let's move out." The shuttle took off, its engines humming softly as it slipped into the atmosphere. Vorin watched the launch from the command center, his hands clasped behind his back, his mind racing. What were they walking into? The fleet had no clear idea of the scope of Earth's hidden power. They had only glimpsed the edge of it. The web, the strange, impossible energy pulses, and the ships that could bend the laws of physics at will. And then there was Director Elysium. The voice from Earth's side had left a chilling impression. Whoever this person was, they weren't just a military leader. They were something else. Someone who understood the hidden truths of the universe, the dark corners of space that even the Concorde had never dared to explore. Vorin couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just fighting for survival. The humans, led by these unseen hands, had woven a tapestry of power across the galaxy. The Eclipse and the fleet had been foolish to ignore it for so long. "We'll make contact in 48 hours, Kellen had said before they boarded. "If we don't, assume the worst." As the shuttle descended toward Earth's surface, the team's fate felt uncertain, hanging in the balance. Vorin turned away from the view screen, steeling himself. Their success, or failure, would determine everything. The fleet had already begun its retreat, hiding in the shadows of the outer reaches of the system, too vulnerable to act. The arrival of Kellen's team on Earth would be the first step in a desperate attempt to turn the tide. But Vorin wasn't sure if it was enough. Not when Earth's network could manipulate time and space, when their technology seemed capable of warping the very fabric of reality. The Eclipse was a warship, not a miracle worker. The Concorde had always relied on brute force to win their wars, but Earth had shown them that sheer power alone wasn't enough to win anymore. As the shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, Vorin watched one last time, his breath catching in his throat. Would this be their salvation, or their destruction? The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with a sense of finality. Inside, Eris Kellen and her team sat in tense silence, each member knowing the enormity of their task. Outside the reinforced windows, Earth's vast, blue and green expanse stretched below, a stark contrast to the cold, lifeless blackness of space. The planet had once seemed so distant, so primitive. Now it felt like the heart of something far darker than they had ever imagined. The shuttle systems hummed as they entered the lower atmosphere, and the team made their final preparations. Kellen's mind was sharp, her focus absolute. They couldn't afford to make a single mistake. The world they were entering was no longer just a planet. It was a bastion of power, a nexus of control that had turned the tables on the entire galaxy. The shuttle banked sharply, and Kellen gave the signal to initiate the landing sequence. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. If they succeeded in infiltrating Earth's system, they could bring back the intelligence needed to unravel the web that had ensnared the Concorde. But if they failed, they'd be cut off, stranded in the heart of enemy territory with no escape. Final approach. Kellen's voice crackled through the comm. Steady. Stay alert. The ground below rose up quickly, and with a gentle thud, the shuttle landed in a dense forest on Earth's surface, its heat shields glowing a faint orange as they cooled. The hatch hissed open, and Kellen led her team out into the humid earthly air. They moved quickly, slipping through the dense underbrush, away from the shuttle, disappearing into the night. For a moment, all they could hear were the sounds of the Earth's wildlife, the distant calls of animals, the rustle of leaves in the wind. But the team knew they weren't alone. The very air seemed charged, as though something unseen was watching, waiting. We have our first objective, Kellen whispered, checking the coordinates on her wrist display. We'll need to access their data center, the one that Director Elysium mentioned. It's located beneath the city of New York. We'll infiltrate, gather as much data as we can, and get out before anyone knows we're here. Her team nodded in grim acknowledgement. They had rehearsed the plan over and over, but now, in the heart of Earth's territory, nothing was certain. As they moved through the night, a chilling thought began to creep into Kellen's mind. Could they ever truly escape once they had what they needed? The web that Director Elysium had spoken of was vast, something deeply embedded in every aspect of Earth's civilization. The team's mission was not just a covert operation. It was an intrusion into the very heart of a galaxy-spanning empire. And Earth had likely seen them coming. As the team neared the outskirts of New York, Kellen's thoughts shifted again. The truth of the web was becoming clearer. The more they studied Earth's technology, it wasn't just a network of military power or technological advantage. It was something much older, something that had been built, layer by layer, over millennia. The city stretched before them, a sprawling metropolis of gleaming skyscrapers and lights. But beneath it, hidden from the public eye, was the heart of Earth's might, the data center that controlled the web. The team paused at the city's edge, taking cover behind a low wall. Kellen studied the layout of the area on her display, her heart pounding in her chest. "This is it," she muttered. "We breach the perimeter here, bypass the security, and get inside. Once we're in, we'll access their core systems. This is where the web comes together." "Understood," one of her officers replied. "But be careful. They'll be watching." As Kellen and her team moved forward, a sudden sensation of being washed over her. A cold shiver ran down her spine, and her hand instinctively reached for the sidearm at her waist. She wasn't sure why, but in that moment, she felt as though someone, was aware of their presence. But it was too late to turn back. They breached the first perimeter without incident, their movements swift and practiced. Soon, they were underground, hidden beneath the bustling city, in the heart of Earth's technological fortress. And then, for the first time, Kellen began to see it, the web. It wasn't just data or networks. It was something more primal, more ancient, a force that seemed to pulse with life itself. The data flowed in patterns, spiraling out from Earth, reaching across the galaxy, manipulating the very threads of reality. Before Kellen could process the full scope of what she was witnessing, a sharp, unmistakable voice echoed through the room. "I knew you would come." Kellen froze, her team immediately tensing. The voice was calm, even amused, but there was a chilling finality to it. She spun toward the source of the voice. Standing before them, bathed in the soft glow of the data streams,